everyone, this is Dr. Liz, and you're listening to Include with Dr. Liz. This show is about everyone, all people, including you. It's about people and their diverse lived experience in this world. I chat with guests to get to know them, their identities, and their inclusion needs, so we all have an opportunity to understand how best to include them, so together we can create a world where everyone thrives. Katrina is an outdoor-loving veteran with a physical disability and chronic illness who will always ask you to hold the capers. A persistent, tough fighter, Katrina is a strategic development officer on a mission to change conditions for people with a disability. Welcome, Katrina.
Hi.
Thanks for joining us today.
You're welcome.
Now, you told me off air that HSCT is your greatest achievement. What is that?
I can never say it right. It's a stem cell transplant, but it's using my own stem cells. So it was a really long story, but basically I needed a stem cell transplant to save my life. It wasn't available in the UK. I found a doctor in America that was kind enough to do it. I had 3 months to raise £125,000 for the treatment, then flights and accommodation and staying over there. And the odds of me actually surviving it were really low as well. But here I am on the other side. And so, yeah, my greatest achievement is fighting to save my life.
Okay, I need to know more. There's too much in there. I need to know. Well, firstly, why did you need a stem cell transplant?
So I got a condition called systemic sclerosis, or scleroderma is the umbrella term. And it's an autoimmune condition where you produce too much collagen, and that makes your internal organs go hard and your skin go hard. And it was just progressing. It can be fatal because it can affect your heart, your lungs, your kidneys. Mine was progressing, and the way to stop it from progressing, there's lots of ways that, there's research into lots of ways, but the way that I thought was for me was to have a stem cell transplant.
How was it affecting your day-to-day life before the transplant?
Oh, I didn't. I mean, I did have a life, but I didn't have a life. Like, it was so far removed from, like, I couldn't work. I couldn't, visit. If I went out to visit friends, I would need 10 days in bed to recover.
And was it just exhaustion, or were there other symptoms that maybe?
Exhaustion, pain, lack of mobility, like, I think everything added together. So the lack of mobility makes it harder to do anything. And then you've got exhaustion on top of that. So then, like, you add it all together. And then there's the executive functioning and being outside and all taking all the sensory stuff in. And that all adds to the exhaustion.
So raising that money, how did you do that?
I think the only way I was able to do that is because I was in the army and I was a veteran. So literally, like, the whole country got behind me, and yeah, everybody just, I don't know how I did it. I don't know. I was just, it's a bit of a blur.
Okay. Was it urgent? Was it something that it was about raising funds really quickly to get over there?
Yeah, so I didn't actually know that I knew I was in bad shape, but I didn't know I was in such bad shape. And then when I went out there, they did extensive testing, and they found something with my heart, and they were like, look, if you're not back here in a few months, then we're going to have to say no.
Right. Okay. Well, that is quite the story. How are you physically feeling now after the transplant?
Got like Dragon software, so because my hands were affected, so I don't have to type. And when I do type, I've got like a molded, like a keyboard that I can move into different positions, and like an ergonomic mouse and a desk that moves and chairs. And I don't do a lot of like walking about outdoors, and I can decide where I have my meetings, so I can pick somewhere that's suitable for me. And there's lots of ways.
And I think you said that you worked for a disability organisation, so I'm imagining they're pretty good at adjusting to your needs.
Yes. Yeah.
You'd hope so.
Yeah, I'd hope so. Yeah, our building is quite newly renovated, and not just for my needs, because every disability is different, and even every person with the same disability has different needs.
We've dived straight into talking about inclusion and accommodation. So let's take a step back. And I sent you a survey before we started, and there was a long list of identities, and you ticked 4 of them. What were they?
Female, physical disability, chronic illness, veteran.
I'm going to start with veteran.
Okay.
What did you do in the services, and how long were you there, and all of that?
I was a combat medical technician in the Royal Army Medical Corps. I was there for 5 years. 5 years.
Why did you leave?
So I went to, I deployed in Afghanistan and then I deployed in Iraq. When I came back from Iraq, I started experiencing some things that weren't right, as in like my joints would ache and I would find it difficult to do PT. But the scleroderma was so difficult to diagnose and so like rare that it wasn't really like really obvious what it was, or so there was a bit of like, it was a long journey of sort of trying to find out if there's something wrong, leaving, then getting properly diagnosed. And yeah, it took 5 years to actually get diagnosed.
So what does it feel like when you finally get a diagnosis?
Honestly, like, and I'm sure lots of other people can relate to this, you kind of feel like you're going a bit mad because it's almost like you're not being believed. You're constantly going back to the doctor, like, and I was told everything from got a dairy intolerance or, you know, like so many different things because it affects your digestive system. And then, you know, and at the time I was a Thai boxer and, you know, I was training harder and getting weaker and I just couldn't understand it. I'm like, but I'm training really hard. So why am I getting worse? You know, why am I getting like more unfit, even though I'm trying to train harder? And it was only because I was working in the operating theatre, and a doctor who did pro bono work in the Middle East saw my condition in the Middle East a lot, and then saw me and was like, "Have you seen a doctor?" I was like, "Yeah." And he was like, "Tell me about that." And I was like, "Well, I've got all this stuff going on, but they just keep saying I've got Raynaud's." And he was like, "No, we're going to sort this out today. We need to see somebody."
Wow. Okay. And so when you get the diagnosis, is there kind of like a sense of relief?
I got the diagnosis. So the first doctor I saw was like, "Oh, this is nothing. Like 6 weeks time, take this medication. 6 weeks time, you'll be fine. You'll be back to normal." I was like, "Wow, it's like finally great. 6 weeks, everything's going to be good." Then you do the worst thing ever. You go home, you Google it, and I was like, "This doesn't say that I'm going to get better in 6 weeks." And then 6 weeks comes around, and you're like, "Yeah, no, I'm not seeing any improvement, let alone getting better. I'm still feeling worse. I'm still deteriorating." And then you start researching yourself and learning more and more about it and reaching out to other people and speaking to other doctors. And you're like, "Yeah, okay, this is not going away in 6 weeks."
So when you're deteriorating and you're not well, what kind of supports did you need around you to help you function?
I wasn't really functioning, to be honest. I would just lay on the sofa all day. Like I literally went from working, 60 hours a week full time in an operating theatre where I was on my feet all day. And then my joints would really hurt, like really hurt. And by the end of the day, I would get home and I just wouldn't be able to get out of the car. I was just like, I just can't do it. And so then I started like working day on, day off. So I would have like a day to recover from the day in work. And then one day I was in work and I was just in like so much pain, like my body was just, but at this point I still thought like this is something I'm going to get over, I just need to push through. Like, and then I saw one of the doctors in work and they were like, "You just need to go home and rest." And that's when I then called another GP and was like, "I'm in so much pain." And they gave me pain meds, and then I was just on the sofa like a zombie.
Yeah. Okay. Did you have anyone around you helping you at home?
Yeah, my husband, I lived with my husband and my mum. At the time, I was living close to my mum and my sister. And so, yeah, like luckily, lots of family and friend support.
Okay, good. And so, if someone had a friend like you or a family member like you going through that, What's the best way to offer support?
Outside of the home, when people don't know you, they're scared to offer you support, or I don't always look like I'm disabled to other people. To me, I do, because I look completely different to what I used to. But to people who haven't met me before, I don't. And so, if I'm out and about and if I have to ask somebody to open a bottle of water for me, or, like a can of Coke, or like things like that I can't do. I remember being in the hospital once when I was really bad, and an older lady saw me struggling to get dressed after an x-ray and came over and was like dressing me like I was a grandchild. And in that moment, I was just like so shamed, like, oh, this is like a real low point. But looking back on it, I'm like, oh, it was so sweet of her. And why is it always the people that are having a hard time themselves that help the others?
Yeah. I mean, because they can see themselves in you, right?
Yeah.
So they would want your help in the same situation. So they're going
Right.
to offer it to you. I mean, I think you're right. I think it's in the moment, it was a bit of a pride hit for you, but in fact, it was a beautiful moment of two humans like one human helping another. So that is beautiful. Now, I want to go back a bit because you mentioned about Thai boxing and, being in a theatre, operating theatre, standing on your feet for however many hours a day. So clearly you are physically fit and able. How does your mental health get impacted when you then find yourself with a disability from your chronic illness, unable to be that former self?
When I was really ill, like, there's so much else to worry about that's not even you. Like, being able to, go for a bike ride or something is so far away from, like, you just want to be able to get up, get showered, like eat food. That's like a success of a day. Like, that's like, great, I've achieved something today. I'm out of the bed, I'm clean, I'm in clean clothes, and I've eaten something. So worrying about that type of stuff, like, it's so far away from you not even interested. I think after stem cell transplant, as you're going through the recovery process, that's when it's almost like your good days are your good physical days are your bad mental health days, and your bad physical days are your good mental health days, if that makes sense.
Explain that to me.
Say, like, I've not done much for a few days, I've been relaxing, I wake up, I'm like, oh, I don't feel that bad today. It's really difficult to go, okay, I feel good today, but that doesn't mean that I need to try and achieve something of an able-bodied person. I don't need to push myself to the extreme of breaking myself again, so that I'm then in this loop of feeling bad, feel good, push myself, which causes me to feel bad.
Yeah.
So those days are like, oh, I want to go and do this, but I know that I can't, but my brain is telling me that I should be.
Yeah. Okay.
That's the harder challenge than when you're actually feeling ill. Same with anybody. You've got the flu or
and you can't imagine doing anything else.
You just want to lie on the sofa and you can't imagine it and you don't care.
Yeah, I get it. I know I'm getting it. So how many years was there in a gap between re-entering the workforce again?
Oh, 8 years.
So that's a pretty significant gap on someone's CV. Does that make it difficult to get another job? How did you explain that in the recruitment process?
Well, I went straight into working for this disability charity, and I don't know how that would play out if I didn't come into this environment. But I was just really honest about the gap when I was applying, and also I had help from a military charity that helped me to get into employment, so I was lucky in that respect as well. But yeah, like, how do you convince somebody that to employ you? So the first challenge is like saying to somebody, yeah, I've got a disability, so I'm probably going to be off sick more than other employees, but I still want you to invest in me and employ me. And then the other side of that for me was that, okay, are they employing me because now I'm a tick box? Or are they employing me on my skills? Are they employing me because I've got a disability and they can go, oh, we've got a diverse workforce? Or are they actually employing me on my skills and they're going, actually, they fit the job, they're the right person for the job, and so the times when they're going to need extra support or help or time off work, we're willing to accommodate.
I want to see if we can leverage your lived experience, and if we have any managers or colleagues listening that might have someone that they're working with that is going through a chronic illness or is encountering a disability that's new for them, what would you suggest is the right way to approach accommodating their needs and making them feel valued and included?
I would say the biggest thing is just believe them. Like, don't make them justify anything. Like, if somebody comes to you and they're like, oh, I don't know, to sleep in between 2 and 3 every day, just accept that. Don't be like, oh, but why? Like, can you explain that? Can you, like, no, just accept and believe that that's what they need, and they're not coming to you. Like, it takes something out of a person to have to go to somebody else and ask for something, especially when that's something that's deemed as an extra, you know, like you're getting something that nobody else is getting, so you're not entitled to it. Just believe them that they've had to go through a process to get to the place where they feel comfortable in asking for that.
What could I do, we do, a manager do, a colleague do, to make it easier to ask for what you need?
Yeah, some friends who I would at work who I would definitely call my allies. You know, being a good ally to people, advocating for people when you see other people doing or saying things that you know aren't right, and I'm not talking like big things, I'm talking like it could be a little thing, but you know that it's going to like really affect them and affect their day. Yeah, that kind of support I think is really important.
Do you have any tips around or needs around language? You know how people have preferences for how we reference disability. Do you have anything that you would advise?
So at work we use there's 2 models which I'm sure you know about, and we use disabled people as opposed to people with disabilities. I'm not really that fussed, to be honest, but I can see the argument for that, and I just always ask people because it's so individual.
You're absolutely right, because I would hear the same argument for, well, disabled person defines me as disabled. Rather, I'm a person first, and I happen to have a disability. So their preference is a person with a disability. So, I mean, you could argue either way.
Yeah.
So you're right. It's completely individual. And that's why I just like to ask, did you have any issues with being able to physically access things? Now, you talked about not being able to open a water bottle or a Coke can. Any other things around access needs that people can help you with?
Yeah, I mean, my hands they can't really see them, but they don't really work very well. So like everything is everything's a conscious decision of, you know, even like what clothes I wear. So if I'm leaving the house, is my husband coming with me? Is he not? Is it going to be cold? If I need to access the bathroom, am I going to be able to? Do I need to wear something with an elasticated waist? Or going into an environment like somebody might say like, oh, make yourself a cup of tea, make yourself a cup of coffee. It's like, oh, can I even do that? You know, and it's not like there is an element of can I physically do that, but it's also like at what cost? Like, is it how much do I want that cup of coffee to how much pain and effort it's going to take to get that cup of coffee?
Yes, yeah.
You know?
So it makes me start thinking about things like, you know, inclusive clothing and inclusive product design. And what do you think people could do, or what do you think people should do when they're designing products to make sure they're inclusive for people that might have fine motor skill difficulties?
I always find, especially with women's clothing, it's either comfortable and doesn't look good or it's nice, but it's like if I wear that, I'm going to freeze, I'm going to be uncomfortable, I'm going to, you know, be in pain. It's going to, so there's the balance of either comfort and warmth or looking presentable.
All right, so we need some designers out there to design fashionable, comfortable clothing that's warm.
Yes.
Okay, there's a market for it.
There's a market there, but then someone else will be like, no, we need cooler clothing. We don't want warm clothing. Like,
yeah, my pet menopause right now needs me to be able to strip my layers quickly. I mean, it's fine. That if they can think about all of those needs, we'll be happy.
Yeah. Choice. I always come back to choice. I think the one thing that, like, as a disabled person, that gets taken away from you first is choice. It's the choice of like where you want to eat out, where you want to have a coffee, where you want to meet friends, what you want to do with friends. The choice of so much, what transport mode you want to use is taken away from you as a disabled person.
Thinking about representation, let's step away from the workplace for a minute. Do you see yourself represented in the media or on TV, film?
No. And also, so it was a while back, and it wasn't me, it was like somebody that I knew on Facebook. So what happens is when you like safety in numbers, right? You start joining all these groups and you learn from each other, and you learn more from each other than you do from the doctors half the time. And anyway, there was a lady who decided that. So you won't be able to see it very well on my face, and I'm not going to do a great. It's called tangulacia. Basically, like the blood vessels in your face, these little red marks. Okay, this is part of my condition. Okay,
they look like freckles through Zoom.
Okay, so they're not freckles; they're like little red marks that a lot of people choose to cover up, and you see a lot of makeup tutorials about, because you can get like medical grade makeup from your doctor that will completely cover it. But a few years ago, this lady decided on Facebook she was going to do like a before and after. So this is what I actually look like with scleroderma. This is what I present to the world. And it was a bit about like awareness and a bit about identity, and let's, not be all false. Facebook took the post down as offensive and said that she couldn't show her actual face without makeup because it was offensive.
I'm floored. I don't know what to say.
So I was like, that was like a bit of a decision on my behalf then, to be like, right, I'm not covering this up. I'm not going to try and cover it up. I'm not going to, like,
because you're just trying to make it easier for other people,
right?
Yeah.
If people have a problem with it, well, that's their problem, not mine.
Yeah, good point. What would it mean to see yourself represented more, whether it's in film, TV, on social media, in advertising? Is that important to you?
I don't think it's important to me. It's probably more important to the cause and to the community. And because, when you've got something that people have never heard of, there's a lot of explaining all the time of like what it is, and not just amongst friends, but like it's a bit of like you go to the doctor's surgery and it's like, oh, let's get all the students in to have a poke about because this is like a really good learning opportunity. And coming from a medical background, right, I'm all about that, and I always say yeah. But I do think that for some people that's quite hard. And I think I've seen my condition represented twice on TV. Once was in House, and even House couldn't fix us. You're in bad condition if House can't fix you.
I heard that he thinks everything's lupus.
Right, which is so close to the condition that I have.
Okay.
So yeah, like if House, and that was like a big thing on Facebook. Everyone's like, even House can't fix us. Yeah. And I can't remember some other program where same kind of thing. It was like, yeah, like the prognosis is always bad on TV.
Okay, that takes away a sense of hope.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah. I mean, there is, if I think about you, and it's naturally you've talked about House, so I thought about The Good Doctor. Have you seen that?
Yeah.
And you see them reflecting autism spectrum in a different way than had been traditionally been done. So still a little stereotypical, but certainly more inclusive than we'd seen before. I just think at some point, I hope that we start to reflect all sorts of disabilities, not in their stereotype and not in pitying. They're just playing a role, and they just happen
bit,
to have a
the
disability.
pitying bit is like my worst thing ever is when, you know, you get the head tilt, I'm so sorry. Oh, I'm so sorry. Like that, I can't. Like I don't pity me. I've had some great experiences because of becoming disabled. I went to America. I met some amazing friends. Like there are positives to take from it, but the way that disabled people get assessed by statutory organisations of, you know, can you do this or what can't you do? Then people feel that they're not able to try and do more because of the fear that then their statutory money will be taken away from them if they're seen to be doing something that's, you know, and the focus on all of those assessments is always focusing on what you can't do, not what you can do. Right?
Becomes self-limiting then, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Interesting. That needs to be looked at as well, obviously. So if I was responsible in my organisation for setting the policy for making allowances and adjustments for people so that they could do their job better or easier, what tips would you have for me?
Make it individualised, which is hard when you're writing a policy. Appreciate that. But I think there's not one way of doing anything, right? Like, and as long as you get into the results, does it matter how you get there?
I have learned so much from you today, Katrina. And I think we could talk for a lot longer about a lot more stuff, but it's a 30-minute podcast. So what can I say? I think what everyone should take at the very least from our conversation today is about when someone has their courage to ask for an adjustment or accommodation, that you just believe them, that you don't ask why. It's not to be interrogated. You just say, okay, because that's then how you're going to get the most out of people as well. So I think that is a very, very powerful tip for managers, leaders, and colleagues, and even those that are responsible for creating the policies and procedures that make allowances the default position, rather than the exception. So thank you so much for sharing your lived experience with us today. And I wish you all the best in creating a world where all people with a disability thrive.
Thank you.